It's 1503, and a man with wild, unkempt hair sits hunched over a candlelit desk in his workshop in Florence. His hands are stained with paint, dirt caked under his fingernails from digging up corpses earlier that week. Yes, corpses. The stench of decay still lingers in his nostrils, mixed with the acrid smell of oil paints and the metallic tang of his mechanical contraptions. On his left, anatomical sketches of human hearts lie scattered next to engineering blueprints for a flying machine that won't see the sky for another 5 centuries. The drawings are meticulous, obsessive even, every muscle fiber rendered with scientific precision, every gear calculated to mathematical perfection. On his right, mathematical calculations for the perfect proportions of the human form sprawl across the parchment, interrupted by grocery lists and reminders about a commission he's 3 years late completing. This isn't 3 different people working in shifts. This is one mind, one relentless curiosity, one Leonardo da Vinci. But here's what haunts me about this story, what keeps me awake at night thinking about human potential. Leonardo died believing he was a failure. Think about that for a moment. The man we now celebrate as the ultimate genius, the person whose name has become synonymous with Renaissance brilliance, spent his final years tormented by feelings of inadequacy. He left behind thousands of unfinished works, calling himself Homo senza lettere, a man without letters, without formal education. He felt like a fraud because he couldn't read Latin, the language of scholars. He felt worthless because he didn't fit into the narrow boxes that society had created for artists, scientists, or inventors. In his final journal entry, Leonardo wrote, "I have offended against God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. The very man who gave us the Mona Lisa, who designed helicopters centuries before they could be built, who understood human anatomy better than trained physicians, who bridged art and science in ways that still inspire us today. This man died thinking he wasn't enough."
Dark clouds, heavy heart, sinking slow. World feels cold like a fading glow. One step, one breath, keep it near. Hold on tight through the fear. Don't give up. Don't let go, hold the spark, let it grow. Through the night, you find the dawn. Hold on, keep moving on. Tears fall silent, no one sees. Weight of shadows bends the knees, but inside a fire, small but true, burns alive. It's still you, don't give up.
Now fast forward to today. When someone asks what you want to be when you grow up, society still expects one answer. One box, one identity. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, artist. Choose your lane and stay in it. But what if I told you that the future belongs to those who refuse to choose just one box? What if the very thing that makes you feel scattered and unfocused, that insatiable curiosity that pulls you in 12 different directions, is your superpower? What if Leonardo's greatest tragedy wasn't that he was a failure, but that he lived in a world that couldn't recognize his genius because it transcended their categories? The hidden crisis of specialization. We're living through what I call the Great Narrowing, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've been systematically training human beings to become more and more specialized, more and more focused, more and more limited. Walk into any university today and you'll see the evidence everywhere. Departments that don't talk to each other, professors who spend their entire careers studying increasingly narrow slices of knowledge, students who are forced to declare a major before they've barely begun to explore what the world has to offer. We've created an educational system that produces experts in smaller and smaller areas, forgetting that the biggest problems and the most exciting opportunities exist at the intersections. But here's what's really troubling. We're not just creating specialists in our schools, we're creating them in our minds. We're teaching people to think of themselves as math people, creative people, or business people, as if these are mutually exclusive categories. We're conditioning an entire generation to believe that depth and breadth are opposites, that you can't be both rigorous and creative, both analytical and intuitive. The psychologist Barry Schwartz calls this the paradox of choice, but I think there's something even more insidious happening. We're not just overwhelmed by too many choices, we're being told that we're not allowed to make multiple choices, that we have to pick one path and stick with it forever. And the cost of this narrowing, it's staggering. We're losing our ability to see connections across disciplines. We're missing innovations that could change the world because they require knowledge that spans multiple fields. We're creating a society of experts who know more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing. The polymath renaissance. But here's the beautiful irony. Just as specialization reaches its peak, we're entering what I call the second renaissance. And this time, it's not confined to a single city or century. It's happening globally, digitally, and it's accelerating at an unprecedented pace. The polymaths are rising, and they're not just surviving in this hyper-specialized world, they're thriving. They're the ones starting the companies that disrupt entire industries. They're the ones making the scientific breakthroughs that require insights from multiple fields. They're the ones creating art that resonates across cultures and connecting with audiences in ways that narrow specialists never could. But first, let's get something straight about what a polymath actually is, because the internet has butchered this concept worse than a medieval surgeon. A polymath isn't someone who knows a little bit about everything. As a trivia contestant, a polymath isn't someone who has a bunch of hobbies. That's just a well-rounded person. A polymath isn't someone who can't decide what they want to do with their life. That's just someone who hasn't found their calling yet. A polymath is someone who achieves genuine mastery across multiple, seemingly unrelated fields. Not competence, not familiarity, mastery. The kind of deep understanding that comes from years of deliberate practice, from wrestling with complex problems, from making mistakes and learning from them. Think about it this way. A generalist is like a Swiss Army knife, useful for many things, master of none. A specialist is like a samurai sword, incredibly sharp in one area, useless everywhere else. But a polymath is like having an entire tool shed in your mind, where each tool has been honed to perfection, and you know exactly when and how to use each one. The historian Peter Burke, who literally wrote the book on polymaths, traced the evolution of this concept from ancient Greece to the modern era. He found that polymaths weren't just common in the Renaissance, they were essential. They were the ones who could translate between different domains of knowledge, who could see patterns that specialists missed, who could synthesize insights from disparate fields to create something entirely new. Why society needs polymaths more than ever? Here's a question that should terrify every specialist. What happens when artificial intelligence becomes better at your one thing than you are? Because that's not a hypothetical future, that's happening right now. AI is already outperforming specialists in radiology, legal research, financial analysis, and even creative tasks like writing and art generation. But you know what AI struggles with? Connecting dots across disciplines, seeing patterns that span multiple fields, understanding context that comes from having lived experience in diverse areas, making the kind of creative leaps that come from combining insights from seemingly unrelated domains. The economist Tim Harford talks about this beautifully in his book Range. He shows how our complex world increasingly rewards what he calls kind learning environments, places where feedback is immediate and patterns are clear, but real innovation happens in wicked learning environments where the rules are unclear and success requires synthesizing knowledge from multiple domains. Consider the greatest innovations of our time, and you'll find polymaths at the center of them all. Steve Jobs didn't just understand technology, he understood design, psychology, storytelling, and Eastern philosophy. The first iPhone wasn't just a technological achievement, it was a synthesis of insights from multiple fields that created something entirely new. Elon Musk isn't just an engineer, he's a physicist, a businessman, a master of public relations, and a student of history. His success with Tesla wasn't just about building better electric cars, it was about understanding the intersection of technology, environmental science, economics, and human psychology. Jeff Bezos didn't just understand retail, he understood logistics, technology, human behavior, and long-term strategic thinking. Amazon's success came from seeing connections between seemingly unrelated fields and building systems that capitalized on those connections. But here's what's really beautiful about our current moment. We have access to more knowledge than any generation in human history. MIT's open courseware offers the same education that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars for free. Stanford's online courses bring world-class instruction to anyone with an internet connection. Khan Academy has democratized learning in ways that would have been impossible just a generation ago. We have AI tutors that can explain quantum physics in the language of a 5-year-old. We have communities of learners who span the globe, connected by shared curiosity rather than geographic proximity. We have tools that can translate between languages, summarize complex research papers, and even generate practice problems tailored to our specific learning needs. So why aren't more people becoming polymaths? Because they're making the same mistake Leonardo made. They're listening to society's voice instead of their own curiosity. The neuroscience of polymathic thinking. Let's dive into what actually happens in your brain when you engage in polymathic thinking, because understanding this will change how you approach learning forever. The neuroscientist Nancy Andreasen studied highly creative individuals and found something fascinating. Their brains showed unusual patterns of connectivity between different regions. Most people's brains operate in what researchers call focused attention networks. They excel at concentrating on one thing at a time, blocking out distractions, and diving deep into specific problems. But polymaths show enhanced activity in what's called the default mode network, the brain regions that become active when you're not focused on any particular task. This default mode network is where your brain makes unexpected connections, where insights from different fields suddenly combine in novel ways, where those aha moments happen. It's why the best ideas often come to you in the shower, during a walk, or just before you fall asleep. But here's the crucial insight. This default mode network becomes more active and more productive the more diverse knowledge you have to draw from. It's like having more ingredients in your mental kitchen. The more you have, the more interesting combinations become possible. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford, has spent years studying neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and adapt. His research shows that learning new skills actually changes the physical structure of your brain, creating new neural pathways and strengthening existing ones. But here's what's particularly relevant for polymaths. The more diverse your learning experiences, the more robust these neural networks become. When you learn music, you're not just developing musical skills, you're strengthening pattern recognition, mathematical thinking, and emotional processing. When you learn a new language, you're not just acquiring vocabulary, you're enhancing cognitive flexibility, cultural understanding, and problem-solving abilities. When you study history, you're not just memorizing dates, you're developing systems thinking, cause and effect reasoning, and perspective-taking skills. Each new domain you master doesn't just add to your knowledge, it enhances your ability to learn in all other domains. This is what researchers call transfer effects, and it's one of the most powerful arguments for polymathic learning. The foundation, mastering yourself first. Before you can master multiple fields, you need to master the most important subject of all, yourself. And I'm not talking about some new age crystals and meditation nonsense. I'm talking about understanding how your brain works, how you learn, and how you can optimize your own performance. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset revolutionized how we think about intelligence. For decades, we believed that some people were just math people, or creative people, or business people. We treated intelligence as a fixed trait, like eye color or height. But Dweck showed us that the brain is more like a muscle. It grows stronger with use. Her studies revealed that people who believe their abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work consistently outperform those who believe their talents are fixed. But here's the twist that most people miss. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean believing you can become good at everything. It means believing you can become good at anything you choose to focus on. There's a difference. And it's crucial. The psychologist K. Anders Ericsson, who spent decades studying expertise, found that what separates masters from amateurs isn't talent, it's deliberate practice. But deliberate practice isn't just about putting in hours. It's about constantly pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, getting feedback, and systematically addressing your weaknesses. For polymaths, this creates an interesting challenge. How do you engage in deliberate practice across multiple fields without spreading yourself too thin? The answer lies in understanding what Ericsson calls mental representations. The internal cognitive structures that experts use to organize their knowledge. Think about how a chess grandmaster sees the board. They don't see individual pieces, they see patterns, threats, opportunities. They've developed sophisticated mental representations that allow them to process complex information quickly and accurately. As you develop expertise in multiple fields, you start to see similar patterns across domains. The problem-solving strategies you develop in one area start to apply to others. This is why polymaths often report that learning gets easier over time. They're not just accumulating knowledge, they're developing meta-learning skills that transfer across domains. The art of deep learning. Now let's talk about how to actually learn something at a deep level, because this is where most people get it completely wrong. They think learning is about consuming information. They read books, watch videos, take courses, and wonder why nothing sticks. But consumption isn't learning, it's entertainment. Real learning is active, effortful, and often uncomfortable. It requires you to constantly test your understanding, identify gaps in your knowledge, and systematically work to fill those gaps. The cognitive scientist Daniel Willingham puts it perfectly. Memory is the residue of thought. You remember what you think deeply about, not what you passively consume. Real learning happens in 3 distinct phases, and understanding these phases will change everything about how you approach new skills. Phase 1, the sponge phase. This is where most people get stuck. You're absorbing information, memorizing facts, following tutorials. It feels like learning because you're busy, but you're really just building a foundation. During this phase, you're developing what researchers call declarative knowledge. You know that something is true, but you don't necessarily understand why or how it connects to other concepts. The key insight here is that this phase is necessary but not sufficient. You need to be patient with yourself during this phase, while also recognizing that it's not the destination. Many people make the mistake of thinking they're done learning once they can recall facts or follow procedures, but this is just the beginning. The cognitive load theory, developed by John Sweller, explains why this phase can feel overwhelming. When you're learning something new, your working memory, which can only hold about 7 pieces of information at once, quickly becomes overloaded. This is why breaking complex skills into smaller components and practicing them separately is so effective. Phase 2, the connection phase. This is where the magic starts happening. You begin to see patterns, make connections, and understand the why behind the what. You can explain concepts in your own words, debate ideas, and start to think critically about what you're learning. This is where most people think they've learned something, but they're only halfway there. During this phase, you're developing what researchers call procedural knowledge. You understand not just what to do, but how to do it. You start to see the underlying principles that govern your field of study. You can adapt your knowledge to new situations and solve problems that don't have clear-cut solutions. The psychologist Jean Piaget described this process as accommodation. You're not just adding new information to your existing knowledge structures, you're reorganizing those structures to accommodate new insights. This is why learning can feel uncomfortable during this phase. Your old ways of thinking are being challenged and revised. Phase 3, the creation phase. This is where you transcend from student to practitioner. You can teach others, create original work, and solve problems that don't have clear solutions. You're not just using the knowledge, you're expanding it. You've developed what researchers call conditional knowledge. You know not just what to do and how to do it, but when and why to apply different approaches. During this phase, you've internalized the knowledge so deeply that it becomes automatic. You can focus on higher level problems because the basics have become unconscious competence. You start to see connections between your field and other domains, opening up possibilities for innovation and creativity. Here's the brutal truth. Most people never reach phase 3 because they jump to the next shiny object during phase 2. They mistake understanding for mastery, and they never put in the deliberate practice required to truly own a skill. The connection revolution. Here's where being a polymath becomes truly powerful. It's not about mastering separate skills, it's about finding the connections between them. When you understand both psychology and marketing, you don't just know two things. You understand persuasion at a level that neither pure psychologists nor pure marketers can achieve. The physicist turned Nobel laureate Richard Feynman was famous for this kind of thinking. He could explain quantum mechanics using simple analogies because he understood both the complex physics and the art of communication. He could solve problems that stumped other physicists because he approached them from multiple angles. Feynman had a technique he called the notebook method. Whenever he encountered an interesting problem in any field, he would write it down in a notebook. He wouldn't try to solve it immediately. He would just collect problems that sparked his curiosity. Then, when he learned something new in a completely different field, he would go back to his notebook and see if the new knowledge could be applied to any of his old problems. This is what I call combinatorial creativity, the ability to combine insights from different fields to create something entirely new. And it's not just a nice-to-have skill anymore, it's becoming essential for innovation in every field. The business strategist Roger Martin calls this integrative thinking, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind simultaneously and find creative ways to resolve the tension between them. He studied successful business leaders and found that they consistently outperformed their peers not because they were smarter, but because they could see connections that others missed. Consider some of the most successful companies of our time. Google succeeded not just because they understood technology, but because they understood the psychology of search, the economics of advertising, and the mathematics of information retrieval. Netflix succeeded not just because they understood streaming technology, but because they understood content creation, data analytics, and human behavior. The venture capitalist John Doerr talks about pattern recognition as one of the most important skills for identifying successful startups. The best entrepreneurs aren't just experts in their particular field. They're able to see patterns from other industries and apply them in new contexts. The modern polymath's meta skills. Let's talk about the meta skills that make becoming a polymath easier than ever before. These aren't specific knowledge areas, they're cognitive tools that amplify everything else you learn. Speed reading and information processing. This isn't about reading faster, it's about reading smarter. The key is learning to identify what you need to know and what you can safely ignore. Most information is redundant, and most books could be summarized in a few pages without losing their essential insights. The speed reading expert Tim Ferriss suggests a technique called sequential skimming. Instead of reading every word, you first skim the entire text to get an overview, then go back and read the important sections more carefully. This allows you to process information much more efficiently while still retaining the key insights. But even more important than speed is the ability to synthesize information from multiple sources. The historian Edward Gibbon said, "The power of instruction is seldom of much efficacy, except in those happy dispositions where it is almost superfluous." What he meant is that the best learners are those who can connect new information to their existing knowledge frameworks. This is where being a polymath becomes a massive advantage. The more you know across different fields, the more hooks you have for new information. Everything becomes easier to learn because you have more ways to understand and remember it. Memory techniques. Your brain isn't designed to remember random facts. It's designed to remember stories, patterns, and connections. When you learn to work with your brain's natural tendencies instead of against them, memorization becomes almost effortless. The memory champion Joshua 4 describes this beautifully in his book, Moonwalking with Einstein. He shows how ancient scholars, who didn't have books to rely on, developed sophisticated memory techniques that allowed them to retain vast amounts of information. These techniques aren't just historical curiosities, they're practical tools that can dramatically improve your learning efficiency. As you develop expertise across multiple fields, you start to see recurring patterns. The way populations grow in biology mirrors the way ideas spread in sociology. The principles of physics apply to economics. The structures of music reflect mathematical relationships. The key is to actively look for these patterns. Keep a journal of interesting connections you notice. When you learn something new, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? How does this connect to other things I know?
Gray skies, heart so still, fading light, shadows creep, still inside. One beat, one side, stay alive, push through pain, you survive. Keep holding on, don't break apart. Find the flame within your heart. Past the dark, the morning calls. Hold on strong. You won't fall. Cold rain, heavy soul. Feels like stone lost and quiet. All alone.
The AI advantage. Here's something that might surprise you. AI isn't the enemy of polymaths, it's their greatest ally. While AI threatens specialists by automating their specific skills, it empowers polymaths by amplifying their ability to learn and connect ideas. Think about it. ChatGPT can explain any concept at any level of complexity. It can generate practice problems, provide feedback on your work, and even engage in Socratic dialogues to deepen your understanding. Tools like Notion AI can help you organize and connect your knowledge across different fields. Language models can help you break down complex research papers and identify key insights. But here's the crucial point. AI can't replace the human ability to synthesize knowledge from multiple fields, to understand context and nuance, and to make the creative leaps that drive innovation. It can make you a more effective polymath, but it can't make you a polymath. The key is to use AI as a learning accelerator, not a replacement for deep thinking. Use it to quickly get up to speed on new topics, to generate ideas for further exploration, and to help you see connections between different fields. But always remember that AI is a tool. The creativity, judgment, and wisdom come from you. The researcher Ethan Mollick has written extensively about how AI can augment human intelligence. He argues that the most successful people in the AI age won't be those who can do what AI can do. They'll be those who can do what AI can't do, and who can effectively collaborate with AI to achieve more than either could alone. The emotional journey. Let's be honest about something. The path of the polymath isn't always fun. There will be moments when you feel like you're not good enough at anything. You'll watch specialists excel in their narrow fields while you're still building breadth. You'll have people question your choices, tell you to pick a lane, and suggest that you're wasting your time. This is what I call the polymath's curse, the feeling that you're always behind, always catching up, always the beginner. But here's what those critics don't understand. While they're becoming incrementally better at one thing, you're becoming exponentially more valuable by combining multiple things. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied what he called flow states, those moments when you're completely absorbed in what you're doing, when time seems to disappear, when you're operating at peak performance. He found that flow happens when you're operating at the edge of your abilities, challenged but not overwhelmed. As a polymath, you have access to flow states across multiple domains, which means you have access to more fulfillment, more growth, and more joy than specialists who are confined to a single area. But it also means you have to deal with the frustration of being a beginner over and over again. The key is to reframe this experience. Instead of seeing yourself as constantly behind, see yourself as constantly growing. Instead of comparing yourself to specialists in their narrow fields, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Instead of focusing on what you don't know, celebrate what you're learning. The researcher Carol Dweck talks about the difference between performance goals and learning goals. Performance goals are about proving your ability. They make you risk-averse and afraid of failure. Learning goals are about improving your ability. They make you embrace challenges and see failures as opportunities to grow. For polymaths, adopting learning goals is essential. You're not trying to prove that you're the best at everything. You're trying to become better at everything. This shift in mindset can transform your entire experience of learning. The social dimension. One of the biggest challenges polymaths face is finding community. Specialists naturally gravitate toward others in their field. They attend conferences, join professional organizations, and build relationships with people who share their narrow interests. But where do you go when your interests span multiple fields? The answer is that you have to be more intentional about building your community. Look for other polymaths, interdisciplinary thinkers, and curious generalists. Join online communities, attend unconventional events, and seek out people who are as excited about learning as you are. But don't neglect the specialists either. Some of your most valuable relationships will be with experts in specific fields who can help you go deeper than you could on your own. The key is to approach these relationships with genuine curiosity and respect. Don't try to impress them with your breadth. Learn from their depth. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar found that humans can only maintain meaningful relationships with about 150 people. For polymaths, this means you need to be strategic about who you include in your network. Look for people who can teach you something, who can challenge your thinking, and who can help you see connections you might otherwise miss. The future belongs to Renaissance minds. We're entering an age where the problems we face are fundamentally interdisciplinary. Climate change isn't just a science problem, it's a political, economic, social, and psychological problem. Artificial intelligence isn't just a technology problem, it's a philosophical, ethical, and cultural problem. The future belongs to those who can think across boundaries. But more than that, I believe the future belongs to those who can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, who can see patterns that span disciplines, and who can synthesize knowledge in ways that create genuine innovation. The world doesn't need another specialist who knows everything about nothing. It needs more polymaths who know something meaningful about everything that matters. Consider the challenges we face as a species. Pandemics that require understanding of biology, psychology, economics, and politics. Climate change that requires understanding of physics, chemistry, ecology, and human behavior. Inequality that requires understanding of economics, sociology, psychology, and history. These problems can't be solved by specialists working in isolation. They require polymaths who can see the connections between different fields, who can translate between different domains of knowledge, and who can synthesize insights from multiple perspectives. The companies that will thrive in the future are those led by polymaths, people who can see opportunities at the intersections of technology, psychology, economics, and culture. The innovations that will change the world will come from people who can combine insights from multiple fields in ways that specialists never could. The psychology of polymathic persistence. The biggest challenge most aspiring polymaths face isn't intellectual, it's psychological. The path requires enormous patience, resilience, and self-compassion. You'll constantly be comparing yourself to specialists who seem to be progressing faster in their narrow domains. You'll face criticism from people who think you should focus. You'll have moments of doubt where you wonder if you're wasting your time. Dealing with imposter syndrome is particularly acute for polymaths because you're always operating at the edges of your competence. You're constantly in situations where you don't know everything, where you're learning from people who have deeper expertise in specific areas. The key is to reframe this experience. Instead of seeing yourself as an imposter, see yourself as a translator. Your value doesn't come from knowing more than the specialists. It comes from being able to connect their knowledge to other domains. You're not trying to replace experts. You're trying to help them see their work in a broader context. The long-game mindset polymathic learning is a long-term game. The benefits compound over time, but they're not always immediately visible. You need to develop what the researcher Angela Duckworth calls grit, the combination of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. This means celebrating small wins, finding ways to stay motivated during plateaus, and remembering that your unique combination of knowledge becomes more valuable over time. The world is full of people who know one thing really well. There are very few people who know several things really well and can see the connections between them. Building anti-fragile curiosity. The philosopher Nassim Taleb introduced the concept of anti-fragility, systems that actually get stronger from stress and volatility. Polymaths need to develop anti-fragile curiosity, the ability to use setbacks, failures, and criticism as fuel for further learning. When someone tells you that you're spreading yourself too thin, use it as an opportunity to examine your learning strategy. When you struggle with a new concept, use it as a chance to develop better learning techniques. When you feel overwhelmed by the vastness of what you don't know, use it as motivation to develop better frameworks for organizing knowledge. The technology amplifier. We're living in an unprecedented moment for polymaths. Technology has democratized access to information and created tools that can dramatically accelerate learning. But to take advantage of these tools, you need to understand how to use them strategically. AI as a learning partner. Large language models like GPT-4 can serve as incredibly sophisticated tutors. They can explain concepts at any level of complexity, generate practice problems, provide feedback on your work, and even engage in Socratic dialogues to deepen your understanding. But the key is to use AI as a thinking partner, not a replacement for thinking. Use it to quickly get up to speed on new topics, to generate ideas for further exploration, and to help you see connections between different fields. Always verify important claims and use AI-generated content as a starting point for deeper investigation. Digital tools for knowledge management. Modern note-taking and knowledge management tools like Obsidian, Roam Research, and Logseq are particularly powerful for polymaths because they're designed around connections rather than hierarchies. They allow you to create networks of knowledge that mirror the way your brain actually works. The key is to develop a consistent system for capturing and connecting your insights. Don't just consume information, actively process it, connect it to your existing knowledge, and look for patterns and opportunities for application. Online learning platforms. Platforms like Coursera, EDX, and Udacity have made high-quality education accessible to anyone with an internet connection. But polymaths need to be strategic about how they use these resources. Don't just collect certificates. Focus on projects that require you to synthesize knowledge from multiple courses. The global polymath community. One of the most exciting developments of our time is the emergence of a global community of polymaths connected through digital platforms. This represents a fundamental shift from the isolated Renaissance masters of the past to a networked Renaissance of the present. Finding your tribe, look for communities that celebrate interdisciplinary thinking. This might include makerspaces, creative communities, entrepreneurship groups, or online forums dedicated to lifelong learning. The key is to find people who share your curiosity and your commitment to growth across multiple domains. Contributing to the conversation. Don't just consume from the polymath community, contribute to it. Share your insights, ask questions, and help others make connections. The act of explaining your thinking to others will deepen your own understanding and help you build a reputation as someone who can bridge different worlds. Collaborative learning. Some of the most powerful learning happens when polymaths work together on projects that require diverse knowledge. Look for opportunities to collaborate with people whose expertise complements your own. These collaborations can lead to insights that none of you could have achieved alone. The ethical polymath. With great knowledge comes great responsibility. Polymaths have a unique ability to see patterns and connections that others miss, which gives them considerable influence. This influence needs to be wielded thoughtfully and ethically. The responsibility of integration. When you combine insights from different fields, you have a responsibility to do so accurately and thoughtfully. Don't cherry-pick evidence to support predetermined conclusions. Don't oversimplify complex issues for the sake of elegance. Always acknowledge the limitations of your knowledge and the uncertainty inherent in any attempt to bridge different domains. Fighting misinformation. Polymaths are uniquely positioned to combat misinformation because they can evaluate claims across multiple disciplines. They can spot when someone is misapplying scientific concepts to support political arguments, or when someone is using sophisticated language to disguise weak reasoning. Promoting integrative thinking. Perhaps most importantly, polymaths have a responsibility to promote integrative thinking in others, help people see connections between different fields, encourage interdisciplinary collaboration, fight against the tribalism and narrow thinking that plague so many domains. The science of synergy. Recent research in cognitive science has begun to validate what polymaths have always known intuitively. Diverse knowledge creates synergistic effects that are greater than the sum of their parts. The Medici effect. Franz Johansson coined the term Medici effect to describe what happens when ideas from different fields intersect. He shows how breakthrough innovations consistently occur at the boundaries between disciplines, where polymathic thinkers can see connections that specialists miss. The key insight is that innovation rates increase exponentially as you combine insights from more fields. It's not just additive, it's multiplicative. This is why polymaths often report that their later learning becomes easier and more productive. They have more existing knowledge to connect new ideas to. Cognitive flexibility researchers have found that people with diverse knowledge show enhanced cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different conceptual frameworks and adapt to changing circumstances. This flexibility is becoming increasingly valuable in a rapidly changing world. Studies show that cognitive flexibility can be trained through deliberate practice with diverse thinking tasks. This supports the polymathic approach of actively seeking out knowledge from different domains. Transfer effects. One of the most powerful findings in learning research is that skills learned in one domain often transfer to others, but only if you actively look for the connections. This is why polymaths who consciously seek connections between their different areas of knowledge show accelerated learning across all domains. The polymathic future. As we stand at the threshold of an age defined by exponential technological change, climate challenges, and unprecedented global connectivity, the need for polymathic thinking has never been greater. The specialists of the past solved the problems of their time by going deeper into narrow domains, but the problems of our time and the opportunities of our future require people who can go both deep and wide. The beautiful truth is that becoming a polymath isn't about being exceptionally gifted or having unlimited time. It's about being curious, persistent, and strategic in your learning. It's about seeing connections where others see boundaries. It's about embracing the discomfort of being a beginner over and over again, because you know that each new domain you master makes all your other knowledge more powerful. Leonardo da Vinci died thinking he was a failure, but his real failure was in not recognizing his own genius. Don't make the same mistake. Your curiosity, your desire to learn across multiple fields, your refusal to be confined to a single identity, these aren't weaknesses to be overcome. They're strengths to be celebrated and developed. The future belongs to the polymaths. The question is, will you be one of them?
Reach inside, you're your star. Keep holding on, don't break apart. Find the flame within your heart, past the